In part 2 of this series, we'll be building out the client side of the Matchmaker lobby system. If you want to follow along and haven't already watched part 1, I recommend starting there. All right, so now that we got the UI built out, let's head over to the lobby script. So everything that we're gonna do for the rest of this video will be in this script. So we wanna find the ready function, and what that ready function is gonna do is as soon as you're moved into the matchmaking screen from hitting that find matches button, it's going to call here. It's going to move us into the lobby scene. It's going to load the lobby scene. And then on ready, we'll actually attempt to connect to the WebSocket server immediately. So from our last example, we already have that built out. So we have our ready that will automatically try to connect to our matchmaking server, which again is our Lambda WebSocket backend. So this on WebSocket client connected to server. So this is going to get called through the underlying like network layers for the WebSocket. When you have a successful client connection to that server, it will come and hit this method. So this is actually a signal based off our WebSocket client. So we go over to the WebSocket client, hit nodes, and then you can see connected to server. We'll actually load that right there. And the first thing we want to do is, let's just update the lobby status. We've got a lobby status text. Actually, I didn't actually name it lobby status, did I? Welcome. Yeah. Oh, look at that. I think we should just name it matchmaking status. Great. And if we drag that down here, we can just add the text to give our current status. So now that we've got our lobby text, this is going to say looking for matches. And where does that show up? So that's going to show up here in this top part. And it's probably going to happen so fast. Like the request that comes back from the Lambda will be so fast that it will probably just blink really quick. But in case there is a slower connection or you do have some log, it's nice to just let the user know what's going on. And then the next thing we want to do is we want to send a message to the server that says, get me the matches, right? So you're going to update the status looking for matches. And then we want to tell the server, or we want to ask the server, give us the available matches. So let's just set that up really quick. All right. So what we're doing here is I'm building a dictionary here with a key value pair. And in this case, my key is op, and op just means opcode. And I'm sending a operation of request matches. Now I don't have that made. So let's just go up to the top really quick. And let's just add that. So that'll be a const request matches, and we'll just set it to equal to request matches. And I'll touch on these opcodes again in a second, but all you need to know right now is we need to send a message to the server to get the available matches. And let's build out this send message function. Okay, let's just stick the send message function right here, message to send. Okay, and since we're sending a dictionary, we can actually JSON stringify this message so that our Lambda server can easily process that JSON data. Okay, and then because we have a WebSocket client, we can send, message. Okay, so what we want to do is we've established the connection and we're in the matchmaker view. We need to ask the server for those matches. So we send a message that says request matches, and it's just a simple opcode back to the server, and then the server will send us those matches back. So the send message that we just built out will take in a string, which I'm always going to use a dictionary, something like this. But in this case, this is a very simple dictionary that we're just sending an opcode, and then it turns it into a JSON string, and it sends that over our WebSocket client. So that's all that's going to do. Okay, and then really quick, I kind of skipped ahead a little bit. I just wanted to build out the ready function a little bit more. So we have our lobby container that is where the players are going to show up, but we're not at that phase. We're just at the gathering the matches phase. So we want to just make sure that's hidden, especially if you're going to reuse this. Again, you want to just make sure at the beginning that it's hidden. And then our matches container, we're going to go ahead and set the user information and the user, I guess the user name, and we're going to set that to our mock user that we've set. So that when that container loads, we immediately can show our username. And actually, let's move this connecting to matchmaker server down here. Great. So I think our ready function is all ready to go. We're going to, as soon as this loads, connects to a WebSocket server, hides the lobby view, adds our username to the matches container, and then we'll connect to the server. Great. So we can close that. This isn't gonna work, but let me just run it really quick. If we hit find matches, and look at that, there's our mock user loaded from the code. So that's perfect. And of course, we're not gonna connect to a WebSocket because again, we don't have a active WebSocket for this yet. And we can go ahead and close this connect to matchmaking server. So I know we've already finished it. And again, once we're connected, we come down here and we kick off a request to get the matches. So if we look at this diagram really quick, what we see here is a client side and a server side, and a server side is our lambda function. So when that matchmaker screen loads, we make a request with opcode request matches, and then the lambda function will get those matches from the database, and then it's going to return those matches in a list. So what we need to be able to do is process those messages back from the server. So let's look at how to do that. We know how to send messages, so we can close that one off, and we know we're going to kick off a request to get the matches on connection, so we can close that. And this is just a dummy test function I had, so I'm just going to close that for now so I don't get lost. And we don't need to look at the connection close because that's just letting us know. And on message receive is the one we are looking for. So what we're doing right now is that we're just printing out the message we get from the server. So once we connect in here, we're going to receive messages. So I want to make a function that captures messages that come in and processes them. So let's just stub that out really quick. And here I just stubbed out the process receive message. So what's going to happen is once we're connected and we get a message from the server, we'll go ahead and pass that message to this process receive function. I just want to move this ready function to the top to get it out of the way. Just to clean it up a little bit, and let's close it so we don't get confused. And so what we're going to do in here is we're going to make sure that the message is a string type. Because if it's not, then it means it's not sent by something that we expect, and we want to just ignore it. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to convert that JSON string to a variant using the string to variant utility method. And again, what we did at the top is we just verified that it was a string using the built-in string type test using type of. Okay, so then we set it to this response message variable. So that is like the response. I'm calling response. You could probably rename this as something else, but response from server, that's what this is going to be. So this will be actually a dictionary at that point, or a variant that we can go ahead and use like an actual object. So if we have an opcode, right? Because our server is going to send opcodes. Remember how we're sending an op? Well, we're going to be receiving opcodes back from the server. Then once we receive that opcode, we got to make sure that we actually have one. So that's what this is doing. And then we're going to go ahead and process it here. And this is just going to print out the opcode that we received. And then if we come down here, remember we created that request matches constant earlier. So that's what we're going to check for. So we're going to do that. Actually, let's just print that out. And anytime we're doing debugging, this is great to print out what stage you're in so that it's easier to track down. What I want to do is stub out all the opcodes that we're going to be acting on for this. And you keep hearing me talk about opcodes. So when you're dealing with WebSockets, you don't really have that luxury of using RPCs where you have this nice contained method where you can just be like method name dot RPC call, and then you just pass it some parameters or whatever, and that gets passed to the server. We're not connected to a Godot server here, right? This is a WebSocket. So it's a little bit lower level networking technology. Now, this can be approved. You can wrap this in some nice OOP functionality and probably get rid of this checking to a degree. But to keep things really simple, if we look back at that diagram, you'll see I'm sending that request matches opcode. He gets the matches out of the database and returns them. And then right here, I'm going to check, okay, do we even have an opcode? Yeah, we have an opcode. Okay, which one is it? Oh, it's the request matches opcode. Now go ahead and, what would we do here? We're going to populate the list of matches, right? That are the buttons. So that's back here. If we look under the matches container available matches, well, right here, we're going to bake in those matches right here in this list here under this available matches container. So that's all we're trying to do here is this opcode just allows us a way to communicate what we want, what actions we want the client and server to do respectively. And because I know of the opcodes that we already need for this, I'm going to just copy over the opcodes that are going to be built out for this demo. And you can see here, this is the request matches one that we've been talking about. We're also going to have a join match one, which is pretty self-explanatory. It means I want to join a match. And then we're going to get a notification when a player joins the lobby. So we're sitting in the lobby and somebody joins. Player dropped, which is the opposite of that if somebody left during the lobby time. Here, let's just move this match players up here. So actually, yeah, right there. So once you join a match, you're going to get a request back with the matches or the other players in that match. So that's what that is, the other players in the match. And we went over these two. And then let's have this check match ready one. That's just, we send a message back from the client once we're in the lobby to double check that the match isn't full or not. And I'll touch on that more in a second. Okay, this start match one is not supposed to be there. I don't know why that was there. Okay, and then match ready is when we've actually got a full game. The server sends back, hey, a match ready, and we can go ahead and move the client and connect to that server. So these are the opcodes, and I just want to stub them out really quick, and then we'll go ahead and build out the checks for them, and then we'll build out the methods that match those checks. So for this demo, the server is going to return a list of matches, and they're going to be in a JSON format. So if you're not really sure what that looks like, so this is like an example data set that we would get back, right? So each one of these sections is a new match. So this is a match, this is a match, and so on. And the match data will be returned from the server with the makeup. Is it 2v2? Is it a 3v3 game? Is it a 1v1 game? And then the status, which should always just be matching, because that's the status that I made up for this, the name of the map, and then the target rank. Well, the target rank really doesn't mean anything in this context. I'm not doing anything with it. Let's say your game had like a ranking system and you wanted to show that to the player, like here's some harder ranking matches. You could actually like use a rank to determine and tell the player like which match they might want to join based on their rank, if you don't want to do that automatically in the server. And then of course I have my match ID here, and we'll get to that in the next video. But so basically we're just going to display all this data in a nice list on the screen. And if we refer back to our diagram really quick, that will be this little section right here where we're going to list the matches available for the player to join. Okay, so let's process those matches really quick. The response is going to be under this dictionary, this response message dot response. Actually, so there's going to be an opcode and then a response that comes back, and the response is going to hold the actual data. So we can pull out those matches, and to make sure that we have matches, we're going to check to make sure it exists, and then the size is greater than 0 because we don't want to process it on if that request went bad. And then we need to build out a function called add matches to UI, and then we'll pass in those matches to add. And then here we're just updating the status text to let the user know to choose a match to enter into the game, because we just put those matches on the screen and now we want to update the status to let them know what's happening. Okay, so let's create that function down here. So we get that opcode request back from the server, and then we pass in those matches to this add matches to UI, and then we're going to basically bake in all these buttons into the UI. And then in order to do that, I'm using this range and for each loop here because I actually want the match index, because I'm going to use it to print out the number of matches, and you'll see that in a second. Okay, so you're probably wondering what's going on here. So all I'm going to do is build a user-friendly string with the number indicating like, okay, this is match number 1. And then I'm going to put the team makeup, which is 3v3. And then we're going to put the name of the map. So that'll just list nicely in that UI. So let's build the button label that we're going to set this to. And here we're just going to create a rich text label, and I'm going to set that button text right here to the label, and we just need to configure out some properties to make it work for our view. Okay, so let's just review really quick. So we set the text in the label. We're setting the size. So this is the size that is going to actually show up in this view. So it'll try to fill out as much as possible, the label. And then, so we're going to set the position relative to its parent. We're still going to create a texture button that it's going to fit inside of. So we're telling it to basically move down. Otherwise it would be shoved into the corner, and we want to kind of like center it a little bit. And then here we're going to set the font size override. And the way to do that is you can select the font name, and it has like these keywords. This was a little difficult to find, to be honest. And the way I found it was, I think if you can drag over like a label, let's see if I can demo this really quick. If you want to actually do this, add font size override, it pre-bakes the options. So I didn't know that these options existed, and I couldn't find how to override the font. I swear it took me an hour to get this until I just did what I just showed you here. And then I was like, oh, these are the available options. Like I don't know why it was so difficult to find, but anyway, so now that I have it, I set the normal font size to 50 and our button text should be good. Okay, so let's actually build out the button then. And in this case, we're going to use a texture button because it allows us to apply images to the different states of the button, like on hover or press and that sort of thing, or disabled. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're setting the texture just of the normal button without being pressed or anything, and then the hover texture, and then the press texture. And I'm just leaving them default for now because I'm going to talk on that in a second. And then we add the button label to the button right here. So now that label that we created up here from this is going to become a child of the button. And then we want to stretch that texture. So that's why we're using the stretch scale here. And be cautious with this, because if you do have a button and you stretch it out, the texture could get weird. So I just created a quick button with some quick UI tools and then just hashed it out really quick. And I made sure that it looks somewhat normal with this applied. So be careful with that if you're going to use it. So I have a bunch of pre-baked textures that I'm using for the button. And so you're going to have to find your own textures for this. But I need to go ahead and load these into the project so that we can access them. So let's just add them over here. And so what we'll do is, I know that where's the path? These are in assets UI. So what we can do is at the top here, let's go ahead and preload those. Oh yeah, did you see it flash up really quick? This is like everything that we have already. So I don't want to look at that part. So let's look at UI. And then we can see here all the buttons available. So I'm going to go ahead and select the match button for the default one. And I'm going to have 6 different button types. So let's just go ahead and copy this 6 times. And this is the hover version of it and the pressed version. This one's going to be our blue button for blue team. And this will be the blue hover. And then we'll have a red team version, which is just red hover, because the pressed version is already red. So I'm going to reuse it, and we'll look at that in just a minute. So we have our match button, and then we need match button dash hover. Okay. Oh, come on. And then for this one, this is pressed. So this should say pressed. So just to recap really quick, I made some textures. They're not great. They're just like simple buttons that I just hacked together.
It's beautiful. I've looked at this for 5 hours now.
I'm sure you can like find some really nice artwork out there for your buttons. So I just dragged them over into this UI folder here, and we can preload them because they're not dynamic. We know what they're going to be. And I just set them to some variable names. So that way we can reuse them down in our class here. Or in our script. So for texture normal, that's just going to be our basic button. So let's do that. And then for hover, it's just going to be HO hover. Yep. And then for the press, it's going to be pressed. Okay, so that's going to be the 3 states for our buttons in the matches list. So the next we want to do is add the signal for when a button is pressed. So when one of these match buttons are pressed, we need to wire it up to a signal so that it can actually act on that button press, right? So normally we do that over here in the editor where we like go over to node and we like select whatever the nodes are to, what is it, pressed? Yeah, here. So normally we do it this way. We're not going to do that because these are dynamically loaded. So we're going to have to do that with the code. So let's just check out how to do that really quick. So what this is doing is saying when our button is pressed, let's connect that signal to a method in this script called join match. We haven't created it yet. Here, I'll just stub it out really quick. and we're gonna bind that signal to calling this join match function right here, and we're gonna pass in the match based on the index that we're currently at, because remember, we're in a for loop here, we're building it out. So we're dynamically setting and connecting the signal to a button press to call the join match with that specific match at that current index. So this is going to be all the match data for that specific button. All right, and then the final thing we need to do for the button is we need to add it. So let's add it to our matches container. And where is it at? The available matches right there. Okay. Great. So this actually adds it to that matches container that you can see available matches right here. And they'll just add one after the other, and it'll be really nice. So it'll look really good there, and it'll automatically line up in a vertical column. So we've got our add matches to UI to populate that. So let's go ahead and close that because we're done with that. And then the next opcode we'll get back is the match players. So this is after you've requested to join a match, you're gonna get the matches back from the server. And before actually we move on, I kind of skipped ahead a little bit. I actually want to talk about what happens when that button is clicked. Let's finish this part off, this join match. So this was actually really important to the flow. So we get our matches back and then we populate it. And so that's what we're doing here. We're populating that list of matches. But then once we have the matches, when we click on the button that represents the match, we're going to send a join match opcode to the server. And the server is going to add us, that user, that client that wants to get into the match, he's going to add them to the match, and then he's going to send back the list of matches. So that's what I was kind of starting on right here, that list of matches that gets sent back, but I skipped ahead. Let's go ahead and build out this join match function. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're just going to hide that list, because when this join match is called, that means we've clicked on a button, and we don't want them to keep clicking on other buttons. So we just hide those buttons, and then we update the status. It says entering the lobby for the team 3v3, and then the name of the map. Okay, so this is basically us sending from the client a join match opcode. So we're sending a request to join the match with this match ID and with the player that I currently am playing as, with my rank and username. The opcode makes sense, right? It's just joining match. The match ID, the JSON that the backend handles will use this type of variable format. I know it's different from the GD script, but I'm processing it in a different pattern on the back end, so that the back end will know to look for match ID and player ID and etc. in this format. So don't be worried about that. Match is turning pink here because I believe it's a keyword, and that was an oversight. So maybe name match something else in the Godot or GD script. So it's probably not the best if you start seeing pink show up with one of your variables. It means it's probably an important keyword and you probably shouldn't use it. So I'm just going to recommend to maybe not use the word match and just call it like a match to join or whatever like that. And then again, with the player, you would never really send player ID in this fashion. Your players would be sent as part of like an authorization token that your backend server could parse out the actual correct player ID so that you can confirm that the person making that request is who they say they are. So again, you wouldn't do this in production, but if you're playing around with your friends and you need to pass the player ID, whatever, it doesn't matter. And then of course I just pass the rank and the username, same thing with the player ID. This would likely just come out of that player authorization token. So once we build that, this mock message with this mock player, we go ahead and send that message back to the server. And if we look at our diagram, that's right here, we send that join match back to the server, and then it will add that player to the match, and then it sends back the rest of the players that are already waiting in that match. So if there's other players in that match, we want to see them in the lobby. We want to see them show up in that lobby scene under whatever team they're a part of. So we got our join match complete, and then the next step is when we get back those matched players. So let's just build out this section really quick. So we need to make this enter match lobby. Let's come down here. See, I'm not going to get that pink highlight anymore because I named it something else. Okay, so just that's confirmed. Okay, so now that we're getting moved to the lobby, right? So we got our match players. We're ready to go from the screen where we have our list of matches to the lobby container, right? So we're going to be showing the two teams here. So that's the point that we're at in this process. So if we look at this enter match lobby, this is basically the client's action to take the player from one container to the other. Again, this is where you could use scenes if you don't like this idea of container swapping and hiding. Definitely, I would recommend using scenes. So we need another function to build out the players into the two different team lists. And because we're going to reuse that, like I can kind of think ahead that we're going to need to like constantly rebuild these if players are joining and dropping from the match or from the lobby. So I'm going to create another function to handle the building of the lobby list. So let's just sub that out really quick. And I'm saying .users here because I already know what our server data is going to look like and what it's going to come back as. And you can see up here, we're passing the full response, and that response will contain data, including match information and users. And we'll touch on that more in the next video, but just know that I'm passing the users that are part of this match in this users object. So we don't have this build with lobby list yet. So let's go ahead and build that one out. And this is really getting towards the end of this demo here. So what I'm doing here is there's going to be two lists. Remember, if you look under this teams object, so I'm grabbing the teams object in each respective list of teams, and I'm clearing them out. I don't know if there's a better way to do this. So if you have a better way to clear out a list in the UI, so this will have a list, this team box container will have a list of child buttons in it, and I just do queue free to remove them. I'm hoping there might be a better way than to do a for loop through it. So if you know of a better way, let me know. I'm just clearing them out because when a player joins the match, we're going to need to rebuild that list with the updated amount of players in it. So each time we build out this player lobby list, we're going to need to clear out the list of existing players first and then build out from who's actually in the game. So that's all I'm doing with this. So we're going to do something very similar to what we did earlier when we were building out the list of available matches. We're going to, so we got our request from the server, or our response from the server with the list of players. So we're going to loop over those list of players and populate them amongst their respective team. And so we're going to make some button text first with the username and then their rank. So that's what we're going to show for the players. And then we're going to build out a label and then a button. And so let's just look how to do that really quick. Okay, we've got our button and our button label. It's basically the same as before, so I'm not going to go over it. I could have probably actually just copy pasted that instead of typing it all out, but whatever. Okay, so now what we need to do is check which team this player is on and add them to their respective team 1 or team 2 list. So let's look at how to do that. All right, so we have for each player that we're checking in the match, we just check, are you part of team 1 or are you part of team 2? And if they're part of team 1, we're using blue buttons, right? So team 1 is blue. And then for team 2, we're using red buttons, which in this case is just my pressed version of the normal button. And then our red hover button that we're setting respectively. And then we just add them to the team 1 or team 2 respectively, because that's what we're checking for. And then if we don't have a team, then that's not good and something went wrong. And again, there is probably a nice improvement to all this, a much more object-oriented approach than hashing this out within the same function as your lobby. But again, I just wanted to do this for really simple illustrative purposes. Okay, so we've got our lobby built out list with all the players in the team for each team. And what we're going to do here is we're going to send a message back to the server because we just joined a lobby, right? So we made that request to join a lobby. Okay, so because we just made that request here to join that lobby and we just got all those match players back and we populated those two teams list, team 1 and team 2, we're going to send a quick request back as that client that just joined. We're going to send a check match ready request back. And what that's going to do is that's going to ask the server, hey, let's see if we're full or not. And if we are full, we're going to send out that connection information to everybody through this match ready. So let's just look at that step where we're going to send that check match ready opcode back to the server. And I kind of want to highlight that this isn't really good practice because you're relying on the client, which are technically unreliable, right? You never want to trust your clients. You never want to like super rely on them for really important critical things. And to me, starting a match based off a message from a client isn't really the best way to do it. Okay. So this part is bad practice. Okay, I just want to highlight there. So normally you would have some kind of server function or timer after maybe every 5 seconds, it can check, okay, is the match full? Is the match full? Or if your server realizes the match is full, right? Because you have 4 people join, the server's going to know, okay, you have 4 people in this match. I need to go ahead and send this match ready to everybody, right? I didn't want to do that for some reason because I was being lazy and I just wanted to get this match done. And so I did it this way. But you shouldn't do this way for your production level games. Just rely on your server to do that processing for you. But anyways, let's just build it out because it's working and it's done. Again, I'm using these camel case variables because they are received from the server, and that's the way the server processes those variables on the server side. All right, so that's it. So we're just building a really quick message with an opcode check match ready, and we're setting the ID that we should check, right? Which match we should check. And again, this you shouldn't really be doing this for your game, especially because I'm sending the match ID. Like you can basically be checking anybody's match to make sure it's ready. Not that would have any dire consequences, but again, your server side should be doing this check for you. But in this case, it was easy for me to just do it this way. And I think there was like some race condition that I didn't want to handle for this example. And that's why I did it this way. I can't exactly remember. Maybe I'll address that in the next video because that'll be the server side part. But anyway, so we're going to send that message to the server. And the server is going to go ahead and check, do we have, so if we look down here, here's that match ready getting to the server, is the match full, right? So it's either going to ignore the message because the match isn't full yet, or it's going to send back a match ready opcode action back to all the clients with the connection information of the server that the gameplay is actually going to occur on. So this is that like end part that we started with at the very beginning. This is going to be like wrapping all that up. So let's look at where to do that processing for let's see where we are in the process here. Okay, so up here, so we just sent that check ready, but we're not actually handling it yet. So we need to make sure we handle that. So let's just look at handling that really quick. And I'm actually going to hold off on doing that logic because this is the very end of this whole matchmaking process. So I'm going to kind of skip ahead to a couple other areas of functionality. The first one we're going to look at is when a player joined. So if you're already in the lobby and the server sends another message back that's like, hey, a player joined, here's the new player list that's currently in your game. That's when we use that build player lobby lists again that we'll look at in just a second. Here, let me just build it out. So these are identical. They could probably be rolled up into one opcode, but in case you wanted to do something a little differently, I have 2 different routes here. Maybe when a player is joined, you can kick off some specific animation right here. Like you can make a call to like make that player button like highlight and move around or whatever. So I just kept them separately and pretty much the same for the player dropped. But one more thing I want to do here is let's also print out which player dropped. So when we drop a player, part of that response message that comes back will contain the list of users that are left in the match and also the user ID that dropped out. So that just gives you an idea. If you needed to do something specific, you could act on that action of the player dropping, and you can target the player in the list if you needed to with the user ID and that sort of thing. But both of these we'll call this build player list lobby, which if we look at again really quick, just to refresh your memory, it's removing all the players in each of those team lists here, removes all the buttons out of there, and it loops over the players that are still in the match, and it builds out those buttons respectively. Okay, just want to be sure that I'm clear about that. And so if we look at the diagram really quick, I have a player join part right here, where if you join a match, or if anybody joins a match, the server will send out a player join request to all the players that are existing and actively connected to that WebSocket in the matchmaking lobby. So that's all that's doing right here. We're going to receive that player join message, and then basically the same thing respectively with player dropped. I don't have it in the diagram, but yeah, that's basically what this is going to do as well. The final thing I want to look at is, again, when we send out that call to check if the match is ready, and the match is actually ready, the server is going to get the connection info for the actual Godot game, wherever the Godot server is running, and it's going to send that back to everybody that's connected to that socket. So it's going to send this match ready function back with that IP import. So let's go ahead and build that out, and this will basically be the last of what we need to do for this client side. And if you're confused, or if you're not sure where all this stuff is coming from, like, you know, our response message is a response message that we get back up here and we parse. But anything after that, like .op, which is opcode, or .response, just know that my server is sending a dictionary message that will contain that. So the server is sending back basically something that's going to look like this. It'll be opcode and then response, and then the actual data. So a lot of times it'll look like this. So it'll be IP, and then the IP, whatever it is, and then the port, you know, that sort of thing. So that's like what this data actually looks like when it's coming back from the server. So this level would be like up here when you're processing it, right? So message, response message.op would be this. And then of course, when we look at these response fields, that's just response. And that is also another like sub dictionary or sub object, whichever vernacular one you want to use for that. So then you just do response like this .ip. So that's just to kind of get your head wrapped around it really quick. That's what that looks like. And we'll touch on that a lot more in the next video. Okay, so let's just finish building out this match ready functionality so that we can start our game. So when we get the match ready response from the server on the clients, I'm just printing out the IP import just so we can like see it when we're debugging. And then we're going to update the matchmaking status text. So that's like the text up at the top, and it's probably going to flash really quick because it's going to happen really quickly. But we're just going to update it. This is closing the WebSocket. So we no longer need a WebSocket connection. So I'm closing the WebSocket connection, passing in 1,000 to this underlying client just means everything went okay. And then I gave it a human readable message there, which is just the lobby session ended normally. And we could probably reverse these two in order, but it didn't really matter to me in this case. This is that start client signal that we created at the very beginning of this video up here. So this signal up here, so we're emitting that signal with the IP import. And that's going to come back all the way over to our start client right here. And it's going to pass in the IP import, right? Because remember early on, we did this connection to it. What that's going to do is this is going to basically hand off from the lobby matchmaking system back over to the normal starting of our client to connect and join a game server. So far, all of my videos have had from this point on covered. So you guys should be experts in this by now on how to start a client and connect to a server if you've been following along and paying attention. So all that's going to do is just call this on client pressed, which we had linked to that button, the start client. It's going to pass in the IP import of that server, and then we're going to connect to it, and the game's going to start successfully. The only thing left to do at this point is, test to make sure that we didn't miss anything, which means I need to add a WebSocket because I have a running WebSocket somewhere. You might be wondering a little, how do we add matches to the game? Like, we have all this functionality to get matches, but how does the database have matches? Well, there's a couple ways you can do that. You can add the matches manually. You can actually go, I'm using dynamodb, which is an AWS product. You can go into their interface and just type them in manually. It's not that big of a deal. That gets to be a pain after a while, right? So I would write some kind of like admin function or command line interface tool to do that stuff for you, or maybe Maybe you want to make an admin portal if your game is growing and you want to be a little bit more professional. For my demo, what I did was I created another opcode called create matches that I just call from the client. What that ended up doing was it just sends a list of JSON that represent matches. So on my server side, I have a way to capture that opcode and then add the matches to the database. I'm not going to touch on that in this video because we can't really do anything with it. But in the next one, I'll try to add that, especially if you guys are like really interested in seeing how that looks. Let's just try to test this really quick. Let's run 3 instances. And if you remember back in startup, our server's IP and port are currently localhost. And I think on my backend lambda server right now, I have the same hard-coded localhost value set. So that means that we need to run a server. So here, let's hit host mode. Like this handles it. Ready? Okay. So we have a host mode set up, so we don't really need to look at that anymore. So let's hit find matches. So let's see if this works. So we connected to the server. I cannot believe this worked the first time, guys. This is the first time we've tested this. Okay, this worked great. So I have a Lambda server already running on the back end, and you just watched me type this up and I didn't mess it up. That's pretty crazy. So you can see over here is our user avatar with our username. The top says choose a match to enter game. So our status text updated. Here's our select a match status text, and you can see how we can hover over the games, the available matches, and see them change color. And then you can click on it. Oh, there it is. Okay. So if you click down on it, I'm just holding it. That's going to change to red. So we know that worked. So let's join. I want to join a match that doesn't immediately enter. So let's just click on Eye of the Storm and let's see what happens. Uh-oh, nothing happened. What did I forget? So it looks, if we look down here in the code, it says we entered the match lobby and we got our users back from the server. And here's that user object with the array of users. And then here's that match info. And we did get a match back. And then it should have brought us to there. Maybe I'm not showing it. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I'm not actually showing the lobby container. Let me just make sure that I didn't miss. So I hit it, but I never showed it again. So let's try to figure out where I'm going to show that. So I totally messed up and didn't add lobby container to the interface. So we need to, because we remember at the top here, let's see, where was it? So we hid the lobby container with all the teams at the beginning when this loads, but we never showed it. So we need to show it here, I think. So this is right when our player says they want to join a match, right? So let's see. Yep. So we send a request to join a match, right? We send that to the server. The server does some processing, and then it sends back match players, the players with the, in the same lobby as me. And then, so we need to enter the lobby. So that's what this does, enter match lobby. And then we come here and we need to show that lobby container. What I also forgot to do here is update the map info text and then the status text. So there's a couple things I missed. So while some of it worked, there's still a couple things. Let me just knock this out really quick. All right, so now we're going to show the lobby container, which means we need to hide the matchmaking container, or matches container.hide. Okay, completely missed that. So we're going to hide the container. So this will go away, and then we're going to show the lobby container, and then we're going to update our matchmaking status text, which is up here, and to waiting for players. So this is like in the lobby, and then we're going to update our map info, which is just the name of the map and then the team makeup of the map. So at that point, I think we've got it wrapped up. So let's just test it again. Host mode, because we're going to connect locally. But again, you can connect to any server anywhere. Find match, find match. Okay, so we've got our matches here. Let's click on Land of the Gray. Oh man, it worked. Okay, great. So it brought us to the screen and you can see the blue team is showing up here. Which is, you can do this however you want when you're adding players to whatever match or game you're doing. I just added first come, first serve to fill up the first team, first come, first serve to fill up the second team. So maybe you don't want to do that. Maybe you want to randomize or rank people with, or add people with similar rankings. Like you don't want a super OP team, overpowered team or whatever. So you could do it that way as well. It looks like I have a bug in my map code. Let's just look at that really quick. I don't want to get ahead of myself here. Let's see, what is that? That was the map stuff that I just added. So that's this right here. Did I mess something up there? Am I not using the BB what is this map? This is map info. So it's this one. So center, everything looks okay there. Let's just check on the map info text. Did I forget? Oh, I forgot to click BB code enabled. Does that auto refresh? It does auto refresh. How cool is that? So it removed it, but it's still the wrong size. So let's look at how to fix the size of the text. I think 40 is going to be a good number, and let's see if it auto updates. It does auto update. I love Godot. This is so cool. Okay, so now it's working. Okay, so we have our blue team, and then I'm just going to click the same one, land of the gray. And as you can see there, we have two different people. The Fungi 357 and 796 have both been added to the blue team. We've got our status text at the top waiting for players to join because we're in the lobby. We've got our map here, the land of the gray with the team makeup. And if somebody else joined, they would show up in the red team. So I don't have enough virtual boxes for this to test, right? Because this debug thing only goes up to 4. So I can do like, let's just try a 2v2 setup, and then we'll go and do a full demo with 1v1 so that we can make sure that it's actually working. So that's our host, our local version of the server. So we'll find match, and we'll find match, and we'll find match. And so we got 3 different players. So this is Fungi 929, 756, and okay. So we got 3 different people. Let's do Eye of the Storm down here. Oh, and just so you know, like I guess I didn't review any of this, but 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember the indexes I was talking about when we were building the buttons? That's all that is. And as you can see, it shows the match makeup and the name of the game. So that's pretty much it. Which one did I click on? The one down here? Okay, so I got 2 people in that one. And then down here, let's click on, I don't know if you can see that, and click down here. And oh, this is working perfectly. So here's an experiment to make sure our drop player functionality works, to make sure that my back end is working okay, and our front end. So this guy down here, 929, I know that was this one. I don't remember which guy, 37. Well, you know what? It doesn't matter. So let's go ahead and kill. I know this guy's the red team. So let's kill one of the blue guys. Let's say one of the blue guys disconnects. So if we disconnect that, he removes. Look how cool that is. So in real time, you're able to see your lobby get updated. And that is from the server sending back. You can see down here, dropped player user. It gives us the user ID, and it gives us the, oh, I should not be sending connection ID back. Okay, so that's a big no-no. Don't send connection ID back. I must have missed that on my server. I have to take note of that. But anyway, so let's pretend that's not there. So what you can see here is all of our users' information. He's got our rank, his username, and his team respectively, and also his user ID. And then that way we can act on it in whatever context or action that we want to perform while they're here. And again, like because you have their ID, let's say you wanted to like click on this guy or this guy's avatar or on his row, and you wanted to see more information about him, you can literally click on that. You can make another opcode action pattern that's like, get me user display data or whatever opcode you want to create, and your server can send that back immediately. And then you can just update this panel with that guy's information. Maybe you want to show his gear or his stats or his achievements or something. So this, you can really expand this to make this really fun and really cool and handle all those edge cases. And so that's pretty much it. This worked great. I'm excited that this worked for the first time during the demo. Stay tuned and make sure you're subscribed, because I'm going to build out the next video that should be out next week. That'll show how to set up the server. This was like the easy part of it. That's going to be a little bit challenging because now we're getting into the databases and how to access that stuff. So it'll be a bit of a challenge, but I think it'll be worth seeing it and seeing how to put all this together. So if you enjoyed this, make sure to give it a like. I know it was a long one, and make sure to subscribe so that you can see the rest of the series. Anyways, thanks for watching.